I feel like as a pastor, if you pick a favorite holiday, it feels like picking a favorite child. So we're not going to, because I mean, as a pastor, I'm supposed to say Easter or Christmas. I mean, something a bit to do with Jesus. I love Thanksgiving, though. I'm not officially saying it's my favorite, but goodness, if I could just get a bunch of my favorite people and family in a room together and we eat as much as we want, and football's on, and sometimes the dog show. I don't know how that gets on there, but like if we can just do that all day, I don't know if there's a better like plan that I can use my time with on a Thursday all day long. So that's great. I love it. I love Thanksgiving. When you think about Thanksgiving, though, it's really this idea of feeling thankful, right? I mean, everything, all of the ads that you see on TV leading up to Thanksgiving, it's always about feeling thankful, that we should feel thankful. Thanksgiving, feeling thankful. The problem is, every once in a while, we experience ingratitude, right? And the thing about ingratitude is there's a loop in the relationship that gets disconnected with ingratitude. I mean, if you think about this, that you should be grateful and thankful for people in your life and things that have happened in your life and opportunities that you've had and right, feeling thankful. But if we don't express it, if we actually experience ingratitude instead, it creates a gap in the relationship. Like it doesn't close the relational loop. It becomes really difficult when we experience ingratitude in this way. Ingratitude it's not like something, it's the lack of something. It's a void where there should be something. And it's so difficult. And especially if you get to the point where you experience ingratitude and you feel like you just can't get over it. And you're like, I need to say something. Right? This is so difficult. Have you ever tried to do this before? Where you try to tell someone that they're not grateful? Like, I think that you're treating me without any thanks. Like you're being ungrateful, whichever one that is. And if that happens, if you actually have the boldness and the courage to say that, this is their response, and then this is also what you feel like in their response. They say, I'm so sorry, but what you often feel like when you bring this up, like you actually have the courage and the boldness, you're like, you're not being grateful for me. And then they, like, you feel that even though they're saying, I'm so sorry, you feel like they're saying, I'm so sorry that you're too weak to handle life without constant affirmation. Like, it still doesn't feel good, the fact that you had to draw it out of them, right? And if you've ever gotten to that point in a relationship, there's this tension because the recipient is always aware. Like if you've experienced ingratitude, that's almost the only thing that you can think of. Like the next time that you're in the room together, you're just like, you don't appreciate me. You don't recognize what I do. You're not acknowledging what I've done for you. The culprit, though, the one that is ingrateful, they're rarely aware of it. They've moved so far beyond it, they don't even recognize that they're being ungrateful. Like they're just, no, why would I don't experience that way. There's such a dramatic difference, and sometimes in a relationship, like I said, there's a gap in the relationship. This can be a roadblock. I mean, it really can stop the relationship as a whole. Often, if we think back to the relationships that have fallen apart, this has something to do with it. That you've experienced, or one party has experienced ingratitude, whether they've brought it to light and said it or not. They don't feel appreciated. They don't feel acknowledged. The challenge in some of this is if you've actually experienced gratitude if you've experienced ingratitude and you did something generously for someone and then they didn't respond, they didn't acknowledge it, and then you are asked to do something for them again, it is so difficult to be generous with people that are ungrateful. And when I read the Bible, when I look at what Jesus did, he doesn't say, be generous with those that love like you or look like you or are grateful only. He doesn't say like, hey, just make sure that they've earned your generosity first. That's not what he did. That's not the example that he set. In fact, he was so generous with all of us who are incredibly, like, none of us could earn what he gave us, the gift that he's given us. So if that's the example, then that means that we need to extend generosity even to the places in our life and the relationships in our life where we don't deem them as actually earning the generosity. another aspect of this is when you have a title, you have a role, and you actually take for granted someone else. Like you expect them to do something for you, and you're like, that's just that's part of the deal. But if you're not appreciating them, even for what you expect them to do, if you're not appreciating them, they often feel like you're taking them for granted. And this is really, really fun when someone tries to tell you that you're taking them for granted. It's one of my favorite things, right? No, that's such an awkward, like, you get so defensive right away. No, I'm not taking you, I'm not taking you for granted. Because when someone says that you're taking them for granted, ultimately it's like they're telling you that you're not feeling something. You're not feeling something. You're not aware. You're not acknowledging. You're not self-aware enough to see what I'm doing on your behalf for you. That I'm making your life better. I'm making your life easier, and you're not feeling it. We don't like that. That's uncomfortable. But the reality is, we can feel something. There's a difference between feeling it and expressing it. Unexpressed gratitude is experienced as ingratitude. Unexpressed gratitude. So you can feel something all you want. But if you don't express it, if they don't actually experience that, and it's not like a zero value, it's a negative. They're going to experience your lack of expression as ingratitude. And it will work its way into the relationship. This is interesting. When you think about kids, parents have kids, and you can love your kids, and your heart can be so full of love. But if your love doesn't work its way out into your calendar, and into your schedule, and into your words, and into your actions, your child does not experience the love that you feel for them. And that's a travesty. That is so difficult, and some of you have experienced that. And you would talk to your parents, and they would say, well, yeah, I love you. And you're like, well, how come you don't show it to me, right? That's the tension that so many parent and child relationships have right in the middle of it. It is the expression, not the emotion, that makes the difference in the relationship. It is the expression of it, not just the emotion. You can have zero emotion and they don't feel it at all. You can think it, but they don't feel it. It's the expression of it, where you need to actually inform them, essentially, that you are grateful, that you're thankful for them. Gratitude and ingratitude are relationally determinative. That means that however you respond and react to gratitude in the relationship, however that works itself out in the relationship, that it will dictate and it will determine the direction the relationship goes. If you think about all of the relationships, even within your marriage, this is true. And if you're in a serious dating relationship or you are married, this is such a big, massive, huge principle. Because our hearts gravitate toward recognition and gratitude. That's what happens. When someone is grateful for you, you lean in their direction. When they acknowledge what you've done on their behalf, even if you didn't even see it that way, they're like, oh my goodness, thank you so much for doing that. You're like, I didn't even realize I was doing that for you, but I'm glad that you experienced that way. It makes me feel good that my energy, my efforts are appreciated. It makes you lean in that direction. And if you are married, if you have a significant other, and you're not expressing gratitude, and somebody else is in their life, that's a dangerous situation. So I would tell you, don't let anyone out-grateful you. That's just the simple idea. Don't let them do it. You will always be more grateful for your spouse or your children or whoever it might be that you value, the relationship that you value. You always need to prioritize and be the most grateful person for them that they hear or see or experience. It's not even to the point that if you can't brag about your spouse in front of a group and think that that's good enough. Because if you're not bragging about your spouse to your spouse, sometimes that can actually even go the further opposite direction. If it looks like a show for them, then if you're not telling them individually, one-on-one, eye contact, just you two in the room, and you're only saying it around other people, that can go the complete opposite direction and be a whole other challenge or difficulty in the relationship. Now, for any students that are in the room, let me just talk to you for a second. If you want more yeses and less nos, be thankful out loud. Don't tell your parents I told you that. But if you want to get more yeses the next time that you're talking about curfew, the next time you're talking about going somewhere, the next time that you're talking about the shoes that you want or whatever it might be, your Christmas present list, like that whole thing. If you want more yeses and less nos, be thankful out loud. Because here's the tension. As a child, as a student, as a young person, you can often feel like your parents, it's part of their parenthood. It's like if they're your parents, then they should be doing things on your behalf. Like, yes, of course, I should be getting new clothes. Of course, I should be getting food on the table. Of course, I should get, my room painted the color I want. We feel like that is an expectation. The problem is they don't owe you anything. And if you place that as like no, it's a demand. No, that's an expectation because look at all my other friends. They're getting all those things. That expectation is inaccurate. Your parents don't owe you that. But if you want that to move in that direction, be thankful out loud. And you'll be incredibly surprised at what happens. Because, and the reason why I say that is we don't want a generation of people to grow up and be entitled. And when you expect that things are done on your behalf, that you walk into a room and you are owed something without any other factor involved, you just walk in, you're like, yeah, I'm owed that. That's called entitlement. And that is unhealthy at every level in a relationship. And parents, let me talk to you for a second now. Parents, if you struggle with this, right? If you struggle with finding the balance of saying no or yes to your children, here's a simple principle. Reward what you want repeated. Reward what you want repeated. So if they're grateful, if they're thankful, reward that behavior. You need to actually respond to their gratitude with appreciation for their gratitude. Reward that behavior, that mindset, that mentality. And the dangerous part, if your child or your children are leaning and moving in the direction of entitlement, and then you give into it, you're rewarding that behavior. You're further confirming that this is how you get what you want in life. By demanding it, by telling people that they are owed, it's entitlement. And if you want your children to grow up either grateful or entitled, that's up to you. And that's how you navigate those waters, by rewarding what you want repeated. So now that we all feel great about ourselves, super positive, right? Let me just dive into a story of a time that Jesus, honestly, every single time that I read this, it makes me feel a little bit, it moves me in the right direction, but I feel a little bit less about myself, if that makes sense. It's not my favorite, but it's really important to dive into it and actually engage with it. It's in Luke chapter 17, verse 11. Now on his way, Jesus and the disciples, on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. This is no man's land. There's not very much population at all. You're out in the middle of nowhere, really. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. Now this is important because it would make sense that 10 men with leprosy, you're like, wait, what are the odds of 10 men all being together that have leprosy? Actually pretty good, because they were outcasts. If you had leprosy, you could no longer be part of the community. You had to be in isolation. You had to be away from everybody else. Leprosy, if you don't know, was this horrible disease that ate away at your body. Is awful. So, and it's highly contagious. So everywhere you had to go, if you're around people, you had to call out and yell out that you were unclean, for people to stay away from you. Can you imagine that? Stay away. Some of us, depending on our personality, we wish we had this. We're like, stay away. Don't come over here. We don't get to do that, though. But that's what these men had to do with their life. So they actually, if you had leprosy, often was the case that they would group together. They would form their own community because they had nobody else that they could be around. They had no more family that they could be around. They had no neighbors that they could be around. It's only them. So they would often group together, find community. And it's also not a surprise that they were out in the middle of nowhere. Why? Because I wouldn't want to be, embarrassed again, humility, humbled again. I wouldn't have to go through all that again. I just find some space for me and my other leper friends to hang out for a while. So these men, obviously they're out in the middle of nowhere. They come up to Jesus. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, as they should. But instead of saying unclean or anything like that, they actually addressed Jesus. Jesus, Master, have pity on us. This word here, master, is actually, it's like the disciples would have used. It's a submissive term that you are in charge. They're bringing themselves down below him. And they're asking him, they're recognizing who he is to do something on their behalf. And when he saw them, he said, go. Which is what they'd been told their whole entire lives as soon as they had leprosy. He didn't finish there, though, thankfully. Because otherwise, that's a sad story. He continues on, though. He says, go, show yourselves to the priests. If we don't understand this, if you had a skin issue, a disease like this, in order to be welcomed back into society, the road to get there was actually through the priest. You had to show yourself to the priest and show him, yep, see, I'm healed, I'm healthy, I'm no longer a danger to society. So he said, go and show yourselves to the priest, which is interesting because at this point, he hadn't healed them yet. If you assume that that's where this is going, you're correct in that assumption. But he'd done nothing yet. All he told them is go and show yourself to the priest. There was no spit in the dirt and make mud and put it on their skin or anything like that. There's no physical contact. There was no embrace. There was nothing. All he told them is go show yourself to the priest, which is interesting for a number of reasons. One, could you imagine the courage that it would take if you had leprosy and Jesus told you to go show yourself to the priest and nothing had changed? So you're asking me to do what now? It's like having a broken arm and the doctor's like, yeah, just go play basketball. You're fine. It's not changed. Nothing has changed. There's no difference. And I'm supposed to go present myself before this person with incredible honor and authority. And, it's just embarrassing at this point. That's what you want me to do? So him telling them this he's challenging them to move in faith, to respond in faith. That what he says, I don't see it, I don't understand it, but I think that I'm going to do it anyway. The other part of this that I think is kind of fun, could you imagine being the priest who already doesn't like Jesus? He's this rebel rabbi, he does everything different. He's kind of opposed to the way that you teach and the line of thinking. He's already just gets under your skin. And then Jesus sends 10, not just one, 10 men with leprosy to go see you for you to confirm that they can be welcomed back into society. You can't ignore that. That's like Jesus just gut punched, just get him. I love that he does this, but he sends them to the priest. Now, as they went, they were cleansed. So they weren't healed right away, but as they went, as they were on this journey back into the village or wherever the nearest temple was, they're cleansed. So as they go, they were cleansed. Just like, he didn't even tell them, and you'll be cleansed as you go, but they obeyed and something happened, which often is what happens in our life. That we're just told, or we feel, we pray, we do something, we're like, I don't know why. I believe that I'm supposed to go do this thing, and it doesn't make sense. And we don't know why we're supposed to do the thing until we look back, until we experience why God had asked us to do that. It's valuable. It's important. And then, at this point, one of them, when he saw he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. Now let's unpack this for a second. There's 10 that went out. There's one that returned. This man was so excited when he saw that he was clean. He wasn't going to wait until after the priest. He wasn't going to wait and get his stuff in order. He couldn't help but go back and be grateful and thankful and express the feeling of thanks that he had. He threw himself at Jesus' feet. I like to think that in his mind, that he thought there's not a chance that that priest is going to be the first one to touch my healed body. I'm going back to the man that did it, and I'm going to throw myself at his feet because that's where the value is. That's where the priority is. I have to express that gratitude. So he went back to thank the one who enabled him to move forward. Someone had opened the door for them to get their life back. I mean, they had zero life at the point. Like they were just outcasts for the rest of their lives. That's what it was going to be. And then Jesus, in a moment, gave them their life back. And the next few words, as it's pinned, I just like to think that there was a smile on Luke's face. And he was a Samaritan. Meaning, this is a non-issue. He would have said at the beginning that all 10 were Samaritans. No, he was the one single Samaritan in the group. Now, if you don't know, Samaritans in the Jewish population at this time, it was like the biggest family feud ever for generations and generations. They hated each other. It was not someone that they would ever be around. But when you're in that much pain, when you're in that much isolation, your religion, that aspect, and your community, your politics, all of those other things fade away when all you can experience is pain. So they found their community, and they were together. Those 10 were together. But the one that was a foreigner, the one that was different than the rest of them, Jesus and his disciples, he came back. The one that came back was a Samaritan that was different. And Jesus asked, were not all 10 cleansed? Which I like to think that, obviously he's not actually asking for the response. He's like, no, I know. I know they were all cleansed. Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? In fact, when you look at the way that the Greek is actually spoken here, it's even more pronounced. It says, the 9 where, finishes with where. The 9 where. It's a very direct, almost incredulous, what is happening here? Where are they? The 9 where. This is, it's kind of like when I am trying to train my son, 5 years old. You have to say thank you. Anytime that someone gives you something, you have to say thank you. And I probably overstep my bounds a little bit. Someone's like, hey, I thought I could give this to Luke. And before they finish the sentence, I'm like, Luke, say thank you now. I interrupt them before they even give it to him because I want that to be a priority in his life. I want him to respond that way, that it's a natural response to recognize that someone is doing something for you. And this is kind of that parent thing. That's what Jesus is doing. He's like, but where are they? You're here, but where are they? I think that if you actually if we'd be able to go jump into a time traveling device of some type, whatever, and go back and challenge those other 9, step in front of them on their journey back to the priest, be like, hey, so the one that turned around, you were 10, and then in the middle of all this journey, you were all healed. And then in that moment, you guys kept on, but one of you turned and went back. How come none of the rest of you did? Do you not feel it? Are you not grateful? Are you not thankful? I think every single one would say, oh my goodness. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so grateful. I'm so thankful. My heart is overflowing with gratitude and thanks. They felt it, but they didn't express it. They felt it, they did not express it. And in your life, how many times have you felt it, but not expressed it? Jesus continued on. Has no one returned to give praise to God except for this foreigner? He's driving home the point. It's look, he's not calling the man a foreigner to put him down. He's just look, this is the one that we would least expect him to do this. And yet he's the one that actually did it. I would assume, I would hope that the other Jewish men would have come back, but he is the one that actually did. Then he said to him, rise and go. Your faith has made you well. Rise and go. Your faith has made you well. Unexpressed gratitude communicates ingratitude. Unexpressed gratitude communicates ingratitude. And on this, there is no neutral ground. There's no neutral ground on it. Your feelings don't count. I mean, we like to say that anyway, like, it's just a feeling. Like, we like to get to logic. We like to just give me the right answer. Don't give me your feelings behind it. This is one of those moments. Your feelings actually don't count unless you express them. It's the expression, not the emotion, that matters. Ingratitude feels like rejection, but appreciation feels like acceptance. This is why this is such a powerful part of relationship, because you're either rejecting or embracing. There's no middle ground. When someone moves on your behalf, when someone does something for you, there is no middle ground. It's either rejection or acceptance. And for some of us, like, it doesn't even seem like that's that big of a deal just to say thank you. But that might be the only thanks that they receive that entire day or that week. There's an interesting thought like this, the mentality of entitlement, because usually when we talk about being ungrateful, we think about someone that's entitled, that just expects it. Like they're just, you owe me. But there's another element here, and it's the taking advantage part. Like if you're not recognizing, you might even be a boss, you might have employees under you, and you're like, but I pay you for that. Like my appreciation is in the paycheck that you get. That's how you are thanked. You will get employees to show up and clock in and clock out on time, maybe. You will not get their heart in that way. The way to their heart is by showing gratitude and appreciation, even if it's what you expect, even if it's in the job description, to still appreciate someone doing what is expected of them. That's still gratitude. And on the spectrum of ingratitude, you have the entitlement over here, and you have someone taking advantage or taking them for granted over here. It's the same thing. It's still being ungrateful. It's still not recognizing the value of someone else in your life. And that's a hard spot to recognize in us. Like none of us want to feel that. None of us want to recognize in ourselves like, oh, I guess I need to say something or do something. That doesn't feel good. But it will absolutely change your relationships in your life. A couple more thoughts. Unexpressed gratitude may indicate an inflated view of self. Arrogance and ingratitude are both grotesque things found under the same rock. Like these two things are related. If you think of someone that's arrogant, they're probably also ingrateful. If you think of someone that's, ungrateful, they're probably also in the arrogant category that you'd place them in. Those two mentalities are related. And I understand it is difficult sometimes. There's a tension sometimes to be grateful. And this is the reason why, because gratitude feels like an admission of weakness is one of the reasons. Like we feel like if we express gratitude, if we tell someone thanks, then that means that we're actually telling them that we couldn't do it without them. We want to say, yeah, I totally could have done that. Like that's within my wheelhouse. I could do that on my own. So thank you, but not really thank you, because I would have got to it. It's fine. That's not gratitude. And in your life, there's been in the wake of your life, there's been a line of people, whether it's academically or athletically or within your career or within your relationships, there's been a line of people, probably dozens of people, that have left a mark on your life, that have impacted you, that have righted the course that you were moving in, the direction that your life was heading in. There's people in your life that absolutely have made you who you are today. And regardless of how difficult your circumstance that you might be in right now, there's still people that you can be thankful for. There's still people in your life that you should absolutely be thankful for. And if you just feel it without expressing it, it is not felt on the other end. It is felt and experienced as ingratitude. So, let's be like the one who went back to thank the one who enabled him to move forward. Let's go back. In your life, rather than moving forward, because this is what we do. We might feel the thankfulness and the gratitude in the moment. We're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that just happened. I can't believe they said that. I can't believe they did that for me. I would not be able to do what I'm about to do if it wasn't for them. But we get so excited about moving forward, right? We're healed. All of a sudden, like, I got my skin back. Like, my digits aren't falling off. Like, I can be part of society again. We get so excited to move forward. We might feel it, but we don't go back. Let's be like the one that goes back to acknowledge and recognize the people in our life that have made a difference for us. So, as we close up this morning, I have some questions for you to kind of further drive this home and to wrestle with. First of all, question number 1. Who is the most grateful person that you know? Who is it? Number 2, when have you felt most taken for granted? And how did you respond? When was it? How did you respond in that moment? What did that do in that relationship? Do you still have that relationship? Number 3, to whom do you owe a verbal debt of gratitude? Who has or is facilitating your progress but hasn't heard from you lately? That one stings a little bit. That one doesn't feel good. As I've been working on this message, I was like, I need to get some thank you cards. I do. We all do. Because we all have those people that need to be thanked. And I think, based on what Luke showed us in that little tiny segment of Scripture, that there's value in the relationship. It furthers the relationship. It determines the relationship. Our ability to express gratitude or to ignore it altogether and be ungrateful. Let me pray, and we will head out to Thanksgiving and some pie. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for everything that you do for us. God, I pray that as we wrestle with gratitude, that we would first and foremost recognize you in our life, what you've done for us, the sacrifice that you made on our behalf, your love for us, your forgiveness for us, your grace, the mercy that you've given us. God, I pray that we would take some time this week. I pray that we would make this a regular habit to acknowledge you, to recognize what you've done on our behalf. And God, I also pray that you would bring to mind and bring to light those people that we need to talk to, the card that we need to write, the phone call we need to make, the conversation that we need to have. I pray that you would give us the courage and the boldness to do something about that. Again, not just feeling it, because feeling it is not enough. It isn't in the application. It's in the process of actually doing something about it. I pray that would have such a dramatic impact on our relationships, that this would continue to grow and build, that we would become more and more like you, that we would see people more and more like you see them, and that we would respond to them as you do. God, we love you. We thank you that you first loved us. In your name I pray. Amen. Well, thank you for being here, and I hope you have a fantastic Thanksgiving. We'll see you next week.